I think is wild that someone would take what I would consider to be the medieval torture device and turn that into a business model and also have folks pay for the use of said medieval torture device. This is wild. Tell me more about what made you take the ergometer and turn it into a subscription model, cult-like following, incredible boutique healthcare experience.
Now, I don't want to make assumptions, MK, but I'm going to go ahead and assume you were a former rower.
Yes.
Even if I didn't know that you were, because one, we're calling it an ergometer.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Two, we're calling it a medieval torture device. I am not a former rower, which is probably gave me a slight edge when I decided to start this company. But I'm going to be honest, I did not want to start a rowing company whatsoever. In a lot of ways, this fell on my lap and I saw the opportunity and couldn't find enough reasons to talk myself out of it. The backstory there is I was definitely a chubbier kid growing up and fell in love with working out and went on my own wellness journey for college. So I went to the University of Michigan. Can't say that I was super healthy. I definitely wasn't on any sports teams there unless you include weekend drinking, which I excelled at. And actually weekdays too.
Many rowers would say that they're a drinking team with a rowing problem, but anyway, keep going.
Yeah, but I didn't get up at 4:00 in the morning to work out. So I give you guys a little bit of credit for that. I was not tough enough. But after college, I fell in love with moving my body and being healthy. And I dropped 20 or 30 pounds, was feeling great about myself while working in magazines. And then I actually quickly moved over to working for tech startups. So in the social media marketing space, it was a really hot company at the time. It was like Facebook was like all the rage. I know I'm dating myself. Holy shit. And I fell in love with working out, but all of a sudden it was like harder to get to the gym. And so boutique fitness, so this kind of like pay per class model in 2010, 11, 12 was huge. And I was like the perfect consumer for this. So I fell fast and hard, was taking spin classes like they were M&Ms, and could not get enough of this lifestyle. Fortunately, my body did not love it. And after dancing aggressively on a spin bike many days a week for a couple of years, I found myself with a really bad lower back injury, like really bad at like 23, 24. So badly, it forced me to one, like go to PT. I got epidural shots. I was in so much pain and I couldn't do the workouts. So I was pissed. Like, I don't like being sidelined. I like to be like front and center.
There's one thing I know about you, Helaine. You do not like to be sidelined.
Nobody puts Helaine in the corner.
Never.
Put me in the corner. I just want to be in the room. You know what I mean? So that frustration of not being able to do the thing I loved fueled me to learn and be curious and start to question, well, why am I injured? I thought that this thing was expensive and I was being held by instructors. And here I am like in the most pain of my entire life. And that was really interesting because I started to unpack what made a great workout. And I heard the doctor saying you needed something low impact. And I also knew I wanted something high intensity because I was like getting my yayas out. And when I started to pair those two things together in my research, not a lot of things came up. I thought that was really curious. And so I just like kind of kept pulling this string of high intensity, low impact. And then I wanted something that was going to make my body feel really good and ideally change it too. I love lifting weights. I know how important that is for women, especially as we get older. Oh, the rower just like kept coming to the forefront. It was like rowing, swimming, cross country skiing. And I know you probably would have written off rowing first and figured out, a way to bring cross country skiing to the mainstream. Swimming was out for me because, this hair doesn't show up like this when I get out of the shower. 2, cross country skiing. I can't even start with that. I'm a downhill girl. And so I was like,
Nordic Track had that covered anyway. I had that market on lock.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I was like, I'm looking at the macro trends. People are working out more days of the week, more years of their lives. So we're putting more pressure on our joints. I kind of want to keep both knees around for as long as I can. I like my hips too. Is there a way to get the results we're looking for today, but also keep our bodies really safe and strong for our lives, which are just getting longer and longer, right? If you want to increase your health span. So I was like, man, I wonder if I can make rowing sexy and cool and mainstream and kind of part of the sexy world of boutique fitness that I loved. And so that was my crazy idea. And that's how I took the torture device and brought it into the mainstream. That's at least how I had the idea to make it sexy and cool. And then there's like, like the 10-year build around that. But that was the why. And I feel like I have to defend myself against you and all other former rowers still.
Well, it turns out we were not your intended buying audience at all. And when you went through the process of discovering this need for a low impact, high intensity, which is ironic because if I were to describe you, it would be moderate intensity, but high impact, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Real fast though, before we continue, for folks who don't know you and haven't met you before, who are you?
Oh yeah, that's a great point. You spun me right up.
Okay.
Helaine Knapp. I am the founder of a company called CityRow, which is a rowing based workout that incorporates a lot of strength training. We launched as a brick and mortar concept, franchised nationally, and also we're very early into the digital at home craze. So we had and still exists an at home rower with a screen and content and classes on demand. And since transacting that business a little over a year ago, wrote a book called Making Waves, and I do a lot of consulting. I speak. I love empowering women and just here living the adventure of life.
We love that. We love someone who's out here harnessing all of their superpowers, I might say, to build brands that help folks connect with themselves and in turn with each other, which really to me sounds like the essence of CityRow. You were building a space where you felt like you belonged, where others felt like they belonged, and could be there in the pursuit of ongoing continued health and self-betterment.
Yeah, and kind of I wanted to create a space that was on the forefront of not just kind of checking the boxes of movement and kind of I want it to be sexy and fun and cool because I love things that are sexy and fun and cool. I want like amazing instructors, great music, an aesthetically pleasing environment and like beautiful retail clothing to buy. Like I want that too, but I realized I wanted more. And what I wanted more of is I wanted to be able to like, okay, all those things exist. I want to peel back the onion of the actual things that I'm putting my body through, and I want it to be fucking perfect. And unfortunately, when you look at the boutique fitness world, most of the things out there you start peeling back and you're like, start running away. You know how many people should not be doing a push-up on a medicine ball? All of them. You know what I mean? Okay, there's probably 3. MK, you probably could.
I do have medicine balls, but maybe I need to talk to my trainer.
You should actually. Yeah. But I just think that we're trying to create something for the masses and we're building for athletes. And so how can we build something that gives people the energy of feeling like an athlete and the results over time and that feeling of soreness if they want it? But we're actually being mindful of mobility and we're being mindful of, opening up their hips and challenging them, but not breaking them. And it was a really fun challenge. It was a really fun challenge. And we got a lot of feedback at many points that kept us going, even when the times were tough and investors didn't get us or people thought that we were built for former rowers and former rowers really don't like us. And so it was 10 years of building something for this kind of consumer at the forefront of wanting more.
Well, as I'm hearing you talk about this, I'm thinking about the conversations I've had previously with other folks who have built what I would consider connected brand. And congratulations, CityRow, you're officially a connected brand.
Yes.
Is that there are folks who have a lot of ideas and opinions about businesses that could or should exist. And then there are folks that actually just go and build them. What is it about you that puts you in that latter camp? How did you take this idea, this inspiration, this aspiration, and turn it into perspiration? Couldn't help myself with the rowing pun there.
That was stunning work. I asked myself that a lot. And I think there were a lot of factors that led me to be able to be a founder, some of which are, had a really stable environment growing up. So I think I have a zest for life of, we only have this one. Let's have some perspective. Let's go for it. I also felt that I had enough of a safety net with a strong community and family that I could always go back to technology. I was really good at tech. Being really good at tech and knowing that I was like really quickly some of like one of the top performers and deliverers from a client services and sales perspective gave me that like I can always go back to this. Even if I got to drop a couple rings, like I know that there's 8 people that I can call and I'll get a job tomorrow. And not everyone has that, let alone 1 or 2. So I knew that I had a safety net to fall back on. And I tested the market. Like I tested this thing and I kind of put out the opportunity for the world and enough people to tell me this was a bad idea. And I was kind of hoping for that. Like I was kind of hoping that when we went out there and assessed demand, that it would tell me, not such a great idea, right? Because that's a much easier way to go. Unfortunately, people signed up for more information and people were like, yeah, I'd love to try that. And I'm just like, why? And so what that also just gave me conviction and confidence that I knew what people needed, maybe a half a step before even they realized it. And that was a cool realization. And then on top of it, I'm very self-aware. And I'm really grateful that I'm self-aware about what my strengths are, but more importantly, what my weaknesses are. And when I took a step back to be like, wow, do I have what it takes to start a company? I knew that I was really creative and really resilient. So I would figure out a way to make something work. Or if it didn't work, I'd find a way to get out of it. Like I am really good at figuring out puzzles. I love puzzles. This was a massive puzzle. I know I'm really good with people. So that means I can hire people, I can manage people, I can probably get people to say yes when they should say no. I'm really good at sales, so I can probably fundraise. And while I know nothing about fitness, I am aware enough to know that I know nothing about fitness, that I can bring in the right person and give them runway and leeway to go figure this out. And so the self-awareness combined with, enough confidence and naivety. And all of a sudden, in January 2014, I opened a fucking rowing studio on the 15th floor of an office building. Not recommend it.
It's an interesting choice, but you know what? I mean, if folks read Making Waves, they'll understand a little bit more about the choices you have to make early on when you have a vision and you have a passion and you have just the right self-awareness to know that you can go and do the things that you aspire to.
You definitely can, but
Amazing.
you gotta dig deep. You have to confront the things that you're not good at, because what that does is it's actually one of the biggest unlocks you'll ever have. It unlocks the fact that you can then go and fill the gaps with people whose strengths are complementary to yours.
I was just going to ask more about that because I see a self-awareness as that dynamic insight that helps you understand what your vulnerabilities are going to be as you go out to pursue this wild dream. And once you know your vulnerabilities, without turning them into insecurities, you can then turn that into something really powerful and probably empowering for the folks that you surround yourself with. Talk to me about how you found the team to help you build this empire.
So it is a bit of a puzzle. So when I took a step back and I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to start this rowing company thing. And if I'm going to start this rowing company thing, what needs to exist? What skill sets do we need for success? And I thought, okay, we need business. We need finance. We need investors. We need somebody to program the classes. We need someone to teach the classes. We need someone to check people into the front desk. We need a way to build out the studio. And I'm like, okay, here are things, right? Maybe there's 7, maybe there's 10. And I was like, I actually think that I'm going to be really good at 5 of them. I'm pretty good at business. I can probably handle the finances at this level. I can probably figure out fundraising. Also, unfortunately, I knew that I was the only one that could. And then I'm like, okay, where are the holes, right? I can't teach the class. I shouldn't design the programming any further. And front desk, I could do that if I had to, right? And so all of a sudden there was a fucking gaping hole in someone to teach the classes. And so that starts to orient my focus towards, here's my next step, is we have to find the right person who can fill all of this. And maybe they can do other things too, but these are non-negotiables for us to fill. And depending on where you are in a business, you could say, oh, it's one person, maybe it's 2 people that we need, right? Maybe there's a unicorn that can do all of them. I'm a unicorn, I think. I can do a lot of them. But I needed to hire Annie. And I looked for Annie for over 6 months because it was really hard to find someone that could do the programming and teach the classes for this brand new company that didn't exist yet. And that would also have the ability to jump big, trust big, and again, take one of the biggest risks of their entire life on there.
You highlighted the trust big. And one of the things we learn as no matter who we talk to, no matter what context of building a connected brand we talk about, it all roads lead back to trust. And I have to imagine that your self-awareness and understanding your strengths and weaknesses, and also understanding your team's strengths and weaknesses, the trust has got to be that connective tissue that really does help build that centrifugal force to bring your team together. How did you leverage trust? And maybe that sounds divisive. How did you use trust to get your team to understand how to lean into their strengths and weaknesses, and also supersede any doubt that might exist when you're building something that you don't really have any templates for and you don't really have any blueprints for how it's going to go.
About leading by example. And when you are confident enough in yourself to not just say like, yeah, listen, I'm the best person for the play, I'm going to go do the fundraising. But you can say, guys, like, I wish I could handle this. I'm not the right person for it. And Annie, I think you are the right person. Holy crap, does it give that person confidence that they can do it when maybe they were a little bit nervous about it before. But it also allows them to trust in you that you are going to admit when you're wrong. And how many people can actually do that, right? It's a really advanced skill as a leader to know when you're not the hero for it. And so anytime you can be vulnerable while still commanding strength, people gravitate towards that, because being vulnerable is one of the biggest strengths that you can have in business, because it also allows other people to be vulnerable. You're setting the stage for someone to say, I don't know. And I love when someone says that I don't know, because as a leader and as an executive, you want people to ask for help. And people are afraid to ask for help. So if you as a leader can say, I don't know, or I need help here, it gives them permission. And so you have to lead by example to establish trust and let them be vulnerable with you, because then you can solve all the holes. If you don't know where the holes are, you can't plug the holes. And so lead by example. Tell them when you don't know. Tell them when you need help.
I love this framing of confidence, because so often we see examples of confidence that are infused, I'd say, with ego. And what you're talking about is a poised sense of confidence where you have a very healthy balance and understanding where you are the best and also where your team is the best. What are you doing to help yourself or the folks that you work with balance that fine line between ego and confidence?
Yeah, I think it's a really fine line. And a lot of times it's a gut feeling when you know that someone is feeling like authentic and real and calm, and they're coming from a place of authenticity, and they are both sharing wins and maybe also challenges. That allows you to trust them, right? Confidence is exuded when someone comes across as real. And sometimes the most confident that I've ever come across is when I talk about my failures.
When you talk about your failures, like, there's a way to talk about failures, I think, that helps folks want to champion with you. And then I think there's a way to talk about failure where folks actually get the impression that you don't have that level of confidence. You're too overwritten by insecurities. How do you, like, give any example of how you frame up those failures while building trust and exposing vulnerability that gets folks to that level of authenticity with you?
I talk a lot about this at the ending of Making Waves as part of the ending of CityRow, in that I talk a lot about how I felt throughout the process, wherein I know that I am an incredibly smart, capable person. I'm a hustler. I get shit done. I'm very good at a lot of things. And so what was really hard for me is that despite all of those things, the company still succumb to the market challenges and the market waves. And there was nothing that this smart, capable hustler could do about it. And when I talk about how I felt about that, people really appreciate it. And the fact that I can communicate that, wow, at times I felt like a failure and I didn't always have a healthy mindset there. Right? People don't always have a healthy mindset. So let me share that I often did not have a healthy mindset. I was destroyed. But what I kept having to come back to, and this is where I did have a healthy talk track and I had amazing people around me, was that just because on paper CityRow did not end in a wild success does not mean that I am not a wild success. And so how do you hold two things to be true? And so when you walk someone through what happened, how you felt, the fact that you made mistakes, and that where you are at the end of it, it allows them to apply that framework to their own life. And then they feel connected.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the sense of, like, like subjectivity. CityRow was a wild success. There were just things that you couldn't control that just changed the way CityRow ended up playing out relative to the vision that you had, for one. And two, you still get to learn all of these incredible lessons and relearn them and enrich and deepen your understanding of these lessons and everything that you do. You're now working with other founders. You're now working to help with sales teams and organizations at Lupintai. You're now on the board, I believe, of a new tech startup. As you're taking these examples from CityRow and all the wild success you've had there, how are you using that to expose these really essential leadership skills in self-awareness and confidence to the leaders and founders that you're helping?
A huge theme that I see is actually giving people permission to become self-aware and acknowledge that they don't have to be good at everything. And in so many places, people think that they have to be perfect and they have to be good at everything. Whereas, for example, I have someone on one of my teams that's like really good at this one thing and actually like not so great at email. And so it's like, if we can understand, if we can diagnose you, right? It's kind of like a doctor. And I'm pretty good at diagnosing people, a little bit of help with it. But also, there's a lot of outputs that, like, even if you don't want to help me, I can still probably tell you what you're good at and what you're not good at. But it'd be great if you would cooperate and show me your blood work.
Great, I'll get right on that. Can you please sign some? Is there a HIPAA compliance thing we need to worry about? All right.
Yeah, don't worry about it. If we can understand what you're good at, what you're not good at, then, oh my God, we can put you in the right seat. And then, oh my God, you're happy, the client's happy, the company is probably doing better. And so I think that there's this misconception from people to hide their weaknesses and that to like be like, oh no, I can do it all. Like, I want to be promoted and do all these things. Let me tell you what's going to promote you is if you tell me, by the way, I am completely crushing it over here. I am like 10xing everyone else, but I'm actually not doing this over here. Let's have a get curious. Let's figure out if we can actually put this on someone else and give you a 10x over here because, wow, those are KPIs the company needs, right? And so obviously, depending on the type of company, it's why I spend a lot of time in startups is I like when things move quickly and we can make things happen in a quick time frame. But if you can be transparent with your manager, with your boss, with your CEO, then like you guys can solve problems together versus you doing it on your own. And by the way, the best things that happen in the world are not done by people by themselves.
Never is the case. But I want to come back to that powerful statement you had, which is to give these executives permission, which to me is so interesting because executives get to a certain point in time where like they don't need to ask for permission on things from others. In fact, they need to slow down and ask permission of themselves. And that has got to be a huge revelation for the founders, the executives, and the sales teams that you work. Huge.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are just driving so fast, so quickly that they don't even have time to stop and take a breath and think about this, which is super fair. But you hit a wall, or you hit a wall in growth, you hit a wall in employee happiness, where you kind of like have to confront some of these issues. And it really is like a senior evolution unlock, right? This is probably not happening at Microsoft. They're trying. It is something that you have a team of a small amount of people and you got to get the most out of everybody. You got to get really crisp on what lane everybody is in. And if people are in the wrong lanes or there's overlapping lanes, it creates a lot of confusion. And obviously it's also going to create blockages at the company. And what these conversations also do is open up communication. All of a sudden, if you feel safe in an environment to talk about what you're not good at while holding confidence in what you are good at, and not being afraid that your job is going to be lost tomorrow because you're like, by the way, guys, like I'm not good at doing the demos, right? If you can hold confidence while also being direct and communicative in the spirit of making the company better, then everyone around you can rally to solve that problem and actually make the company better. And so we really need to continue to give people permission for that. It also gives permission for people to like challenge things, which is really beautiful. And so it's kind of like, let's stop being happy-go-lucky. Let's still be positive, but let's be real.
The pragmatism is a really important piece of this. And if your team is not being pragmatic, they're not being transparent, you use the big C word, communicative. If they're not being communicative, it's as the trifecta of disaster for organizations who are going to perpetuate the same thing over and over again, which to your point, if you're going to do the same thing again, it's just not going to keep working. You're just going to keep, it's the literal definition of insanity to keep trying the same thing over and over again. But if you, as a leader, show up, start giving folks the blueprint in action for how you want them to conduct, themselves and yourself in business, you then have a bunch of mini CEOs running around thinking, how can I make this business more effective, more impactful, more efficient, more dialed in, more, connected to the folks that we do business with or want to do business with.
It's also called empowerment, right? You're empowering people to take control of their own jobs, of their own businesses, of their own outputs, of their own team's outputs. All of a sudden, you have way more brain power going into solving business problems than just you as the CEO. And so there is nothing more impactful for your business than empowering your managers and your teams and your individual contributors to be critically thinking and challenging and evolving the business, right? There is a constant saying that A players hire A players and B players hire C players. As an A player, I want to hire people that are going to challenge me because I don't know everything. I don't see everything. I want everyone coming to me with ideas and challenges. One of the biggest unlocks that, happened at one of the consulting companies that I worked for actually was someone directly challenging one of my big ideas.
Let's play that out. What happened?
It totally worked. I had a very specific idea of how we were going to do a hiring plan for the year to grow top line. And as I started to socialize it, actually, even before I started to socialize it, someone came to me and was like, I have a really interesting idea that I think is going to be a more likely build for us from a biz dev perspective. And I think that I can do it. And I want to be empowered to take the reins. And I was like completely fucking taken aback by this because I didn't see it coming. This person wasn't empowered 6 months ago. And all of a sudden they're coming to the idea with a really big idea that like kind of made a lot of sense. And so it's amazing what happens when you empower people and you trust people. They start to trust themselves and then they operate more confidently and then they have stronger conversations and they connect deeper because they're not shielding anything. And when people connect deeper with clients, I don't care what role they're in, they're better at their job.
Well, folks want to spend more time working with you, learning from you, finding the best ways to empower their team and just generally give themselves permission to be the type of leader, not just manager, that they want to be in this world. How do they get in touch with you? How can they work with you? What's the best way that they can get some of this Helaine DNA?
HelaineKnapp.com or Helaine Knapp on Instagram, LinkedIn, or just Helaine and HelaineKnapp.com.
And if folks want to read the wild story of CityRow, how can they find Making Waves? What's the best way to get that book in their paws?
Yeah, Google Making Waves on Amazon, or you can find it on any of my socials or my website.
I read it, people. It's really good. And there's like one pivotal part where you're like, what the hell is going to happen here? And yeah, it's a page turner for sure. Always a pleasure to get to learn from you, chat with you, riff with you, build incredible teams together with you. Thank you so much.
Gotcha, MK.